Hiccup and Astrid, the most popular relationship from the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. Now that we're getting a live-action How to Train Your Dragon soon, I thought it would be fun to go over the entire timeline of Hiccup and Astrid's relationship, or Hickstrid for short, from the films, since Astrid doesn't even exist in the books. So let's get started. The story of their relationship began when they were both very young. We don't know an exact time and date or how old they were, but at some point before the first film, we know that Hiccup developed a crush on Astrid Hofferson. Hiccup had always admired her courage and bravery, along with her raw talent and competitive personality. Astrid was part of the Hofferson clan, meaning she was naturally competitive from the start. One day, while Hiccup was talking to Gobber while working in the forges, he began talking about her, claiming she wouldn't come near him even if she was on fire and he had the only bucket of water in town. Speak of the devil, the subject of their discussion had arrived at the forge and asked for them to resharpen her mother's axe. Gobber decided to leave the two of them alone after hearing how Hiccup spoke about her before, and they had an actual conversation once Astrid snooped around and found a room full of sketches Hiccup had made of his inventions. Hiccup, of course, was a nervous wreck and was very prone to stuttering when around her, but he did manage to explain that these would make killing dragons easier, but Astrid disapproved, saying that she preferred close combat fighting and claimed it was kind of the Viking way. They then spoke about dragon training, and while this was happening, Hiccup took his eyes off the axe and watched Astrid, and in doing so, he broke the axe. He managed to replace it without her noticing, and she thanked him for it. This isn't a deleted scene, so I don't actually know when on the timeline this takes place, but I thought it was worth it to mention it. Now we move on to the events of the first film. It was made explicitly clear very early on that Hiccup had a massive crush on her. At this point, Hiccup had prepared his latest invention known as the Mangler. This weapon could shoot bolas much further than he could throw them, so he took this invention out and managed to shoot down the fabled Night Fury that was attacking the village. But then a monstrous nightmare tried to kill him and he was humiliatingly saved by his father, Stoic the Vast, in front of everyone. This, of course, sent the other Vikings his age into a torrent of teasing and ridiculing, but not Astrid. In fact, in this scene, Astrid looked almost sorry for him, which is an important detail for later. Moving on, once Hiccup discovered Toothless and returned home after freeing him, he was forced to be enlisted into dragon training by his father. This dragon training was run by Gobber, and it was very hands-on, to say the least. There, he was amongst all the other Vikings in his age group, including Astrid. Hiccup, of course, did terrible at the start, and after a while, Hiccup did manage to speak to her again, but it was very brief, as a Grunkle fired a fire blast at him. The next time they interacted was in the Great Hall while eating dinner. Here, we get a very interesting line. When Gobber asks everyone where Hiccup went wrong in the arena today, while everyone else gave sarcastic responses, Astrid said,
"He's never where he should be."
Thank you, Astrid.
And you can tell she felt pretty annoyed by this fact. Astrid was all serious at this point, so Hiccup being out of place legitimately upset her. This brings us to the next time they interact. The infamous battle against Stormfly. Once again, it was a very short interaction, and Hiccup did his best to follow Astrid's orders, but the next interaction is famous.
Ooh, love on the battlefield.
She could do better.
Let me... Why don't you...
After untangling themselves, Astrid defeated Stormfly and turned to face Hiccup angrily. He once again had been out of place, and it nearly cost both of them to get eaten alive. Astrid yells at him for this, asking if he thought this whole thing was a joke.
Our parents' war is about to become ours. Figure out which side you're on.
At this point, things were going pretty terribly for them, and there seemed to be very little hope for Hiccup to ever get the girl of his dreams now. But then, Hiccup went back out and found Toothless, and slowly he began to train him. This would be the major breakthrough for Hiccup. He had found something that he was good at other than inventing. He became so obsessed with learning how to train Toothless that he even left in the middle of dinner with Astrid and the others to go to the forge, which Astrid actually took notice to. Pretty soon, Hiccup had successfully flown Toothless for the first time, even if it was very brief. But while doing this, he had learned that dragons hate eels. The next time Hiccup and Astrid interacted was the turning point. Against Barf and Belch, the Zippleback, Hiccup used his newfound knowledge to subdue the dragon with the eels, while everyone else, including Astrid, watched in awe.
Okay, so are we done? Cause I've got some things I need to, See you tomorrow.
You could only imagine how Astrid felt. Maybe proud? Whatever she felt, it quickly turned into jealousy, as Hiccup continued to learn new things to subdue dragons, like using Dragon Nip and scratching the right spot on a dragon's neck. Astrid continued watching as Hiccup bested her time and time again. Proud as she may have felt at one point, she was also a Hofferson, and that competitive side took over. She began to dislike Hiccup not out of annoyance, but out of competition, because at this point, Hiccup was on his way to being the one that would earn the honor of killing his first dragon in front of the entire village, not her.
Wow, he's better than you ever were.
One day while training out in the woods, the pair came across each other in a chance accident, but Hiccup was not willing to stick around, and even though she tried to follow him, he evaded her once again. Eventually, Astrid attempted to confront him about this.
I normally don't care what people do, but you're acting weird. Well, weirder.
But Hiccup escaped with Toothless without her seeing, which probably annoyed her even worse than before. And that brought the two of them back together for one final showdown in front of everyone. Whoever subdued the Grunkle would get to kill the dragon. Once again, Hiccup was the one to do it. At this point, Astrid went completely nuts and nearly chopped his head off. Things were looking very bad for the two of them. But then, once Hiccup tried to make a break for it, Astrid finally caught him in the act at the cove. He tried his best to hide the fact that she was mere footsteps away from a Night Fury, but at this point, she had had enough and physically hurt him. Lots of people have issues with this moment, and to be honest, I don't blame them. But very soon, Astrid would never hurt Hiccup again, because Toothless then came to protect him. After a brief and very awkward introduction, Astrid fled, presumably to tell the other Vikings what he had done. Hiccup took matters into his own hands and carried Astrid into the branches of a tree. She basically had two choices: listen to him or fall to her death. She considered death, funnily enough, but something had changed within Hiccup. The stutter that was so characteristic was completely gone, instead replaced by insistence. He implored her to hear him out, and Astrid climbed on very carefully. Hiccup had planned to show her that Toothless wasn't so bad, but Toothless, after the interaction they had earlier, had other ideas.
Toothless! What is wrong with you? Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile.
Holding on for dear life, Astrid apologized, and that apology changed everything. Toothless accepted her apology and basically became Hiccup's wingman. During the flight, Astrid's perspective on Hiccup completely changed. He wasn't just getting lucky in that arena, he actually knew what he was doing, and what he was doing was absolutely amazing. After they flew around for a while, Astrid had warmed up to Hiccup enough to wrap her arms around him, which made Hiccup ecstatic. At this point, Astrid had also developed a crush on Hiccup, but the flight wasn't over yet, and neither was the issue at hand. Hiccup now had to kill a dragon in front of the whole village, and he had no idea how. But then, Toothless heard the call of the Red Death and began flying towards the nest. Hiccup and Astrid were the first Vikings to ever see it, and once they escaped, Astrid's first act was to go tell Stoic about it, but Hiccup stopped her. His stuttery mannerism once again replaced by seriousness, he told her they would kill Toothless and that they needed to think this through. Astrid told him that they had just found the dragon's nest, the thing they had been after since Vikings first settled here.
And you want to keep it a secret? To protect your pet dragon? Are you serious?
Yes.
This act, to me, is what caused Astrid to fall for him completely. Not only had he tamed a dragon, he was willing to lie to Stoic the Vast of all people to protect said dragon from harm. After asking what they should do, Hiccup told her to let him think about it.
Okay. That's for kidnapping me. That's for everything else.
At this point, Hickstrid was now possible. Notice I said possible and not official. There is a very clear distinction when it becomes official, and it's not here. As long as you treat Race to the Edges canon, which I do. Fast forward to the big event, Astrid wished him good luck in the arena, and asked him to promise her it wouldn't go wrong. It went horribly wrong. Hiccup tried to show the village what he had learned when he tried to tame Hookfang, the dragon he was supposed to kill. But things went poorly, and Astrid ran in immediately to try to save him, only to then be chased off by Hookfang herself. But then, Toothless came in and saved both of them. But in the process, he got himself captured. Once the Vikings sailed away with Toothless to go find the dragon's nest, Astrid went to speak to Hiccup. For me, every long-lasting, healthy relationship requires two major things: trust and understanding. The trust was strong with them already, but the understanding was not. Hiccup understood her pretty well, but Astrid still had lots to learn about him. So, she asked him.
Why couldn't I have killed that dragon when I found him in the woods?
The rest of us would have done it. Why didn't you?
I couldn't.
That's not an answer.
Why is this so important to you all of a sudden?
Because I want to remember what you say right now.
I was a coward. I was weak. I wouldn't kill a dragon.
You said wouldn't that time.
Okay, whatever. I wouldn't. 300 years, and I'm the first Viking who wouldn't kill a dragon.
First to ride one, though. So...
I wouldn't kill him because he looked as frightened as I was. I looked at him, and I saw myself.
This moment is huge. Astrid now finally understood Hiccup's mindset, his philosophy, his mercy, and his idealisms. Fast forwarding again, Astrid helps Hiccup save Toothless by gathering all her friends who had since become friends with Hiccup once he showed talent in the dragon arena. Together, they trained each dragon in the arena, even Hookfang. The gang then went to save Toothless and began to fight the Red Death herself. Hiccup rode with Astrid and called the shots, and the Vikings all looked up in awe at the sight of their children riding dragons. Once Toothless was free, the Night Fury and Rider took to the skies, but things began to get scary for Astrid. Hiccup and Toothless flew in and blasted the dragon, but this act sent Astrid tumbling through the air. Hiccup was quick though, and he guided Toothless to save her.
Together!
At this point, the others had become subdued, and the battle became a 2v1, Hiccup and Toothless versus the Red Death, and all Astrid could do was watch and pray. Eventually, Hiccup did defeat the Red Death, but at a great cost. Astrid looked on in horror and sadness at the thought of Hiccup being dead, but when it was revealed that he was alive, she was overcome by joy and relief. Once Hiccup woke up, he was met with many surprises, but Astrid's surprise was probably the best one.
That's for scaring me.
What is it always gonna be this way? Because I could get used to it.
From this point on, Hickstrid had become a thing and was publicly known. For the next little while, they continued their relationship and were consistently building that trust and understanding up. As we fast forward through the next 2 years, we see their relationship blossom throughout Defenders of Berk, Riders of Berk, and Gift of the Night Fury. We see them overcome many struggles together, as well as working as a team with everyone else. One thing that is interesting here though, in between these 2 years and the first episode of Race to the Edge, something must have happened with the two of them. Because once Race to the Edge started, the first 3 seasons of that series represented a more platonic relationship rather than a romantic one. There were still some very obvious moments that show the two of them still cared for one another, but what I think happened here is that the writers took time to make Hickstrid even more official. That is, to show them develop into the second phase of their relationship in a mature way. A slow burn, if you will, rather than a spontaneous kiss. Or maybe not. All I know is the first 3.5 seasons of Race to the Edge represented a platonic relationship. In Season 1, when the gang is reunited with Heather once again, Astrid takes her to her training sanctuary to throw axes. While there, Heather asks the question the entire fandom had been wondering since the start of the season.
So, you two were a thing, right?
What? No, just friends.
And oddly enough, Astrid is adamant that they were just friends. You'd think she'd want to brag about that. Heather doesn't buy it though, and tells Astrid that Hiccup was cute, to which Astrid awkwardly agreed with. When Heather returns in Season 3, she asks her about Hiccup again.
Well, what about him?
Astrid, life is too short. You need to express your feelings. Stop wasting time.
Personally, I think this is the moment where Astrid began to take their relationship more seriously, if you will, as she realized that Heather was right. Despite the platonic nature, there are still many nice moments, like Hiccup rescuing Astrid from drowning in the ocean, Hiccup curing Astrid's sickness, Astrid saving Hiccup from the dragon hunters, Astrid comforting Hiccup at the dragon auction, and a whole bunch of moments in Season 4 where they save one another. However, as many fans know, the end of Season 4 was where things began to really happen between them, and it all began in Season 4, Episode 11, Blindsided. For those who love Hickstrid, this is probably your favorite episode in the entire series. I know it's mine. The episode starts off with the gang trying to tame the Triple Strike, the dragon they had found in the dragon fighting arena, but they abandoned the mission as a storm attacked the edge. During the storm, Astrid went out to see if the dragons were safe in the stables. While she was leaving the stables though, lightning struck the ground right in front of her, and the intense light blinded her and also rendered her unconscious. Hiccup had heard the blast and found her and shielded her body from harm, and returned her to the clubhouse. But when she woke up, everyone slowly realized the horrifying reality. She couldn't see. Everyone is right in front of her, but she insists that the room they're in is pitch black. Everyone is incredibly concerned, but Hiccup was more concerned than anyone. He tells the others to leave them alone, and he attempts to comfort her, which she appreciates as she offers him her hand. She of course wants to go back out there and save the dragons, but Hiccup tells her that it wasn't a good idea and urges her to rest for now.
Hiccup, are you still there?
Yes. Yes. I'm here, Astrid.
Will you and Toothless stay with me a little while? Just until I fall asleep.
Of course. We're not going anywhere.
One of the many reasons people love this episode so much is because it shows just how much Hiccup cares for Astrid, as he guides her the entire time, never once leaving her side. As they go out in search of the dragons once the storm subsided, Astrid nearly falls off Toothless, but Hiccup reaches back and catches her. This scene is a direct parallel to the romantic flight scene, which kind of supports my theory that they were trying to rebuild Hiccup and Race to the Edge. While searching for Stormfly, they found themselves in a clearing with a little stream. They have a quick back and forth on where Stormfly would be, but as Astrid stops talking, she begins running the opposite direction, and trips over a rock and falls to the ground. Hiccup dove after her and caught her, protecting her head from hitting the hard earth. They both take deep breaths, but the interaction quickly becomes awkward as they realize the position they were in. Eventually, Stormfly found them, proving Astrid was right about her dragon, and we get the first sense that Astrid is getting used to using her other senses now that her eyesight was gone. It gets to a point where Astrid begins to wonder if this would be how she would spend the rest of her life. Hiccup told her that if that were the case, they would deal with it. Just because she couldn't see didn't mean she was helpless. Astrid admits that that was exactly how she felt.
You don't think we can handle this? Astrid, you have me. No matter whatever that means, whatever you want it to mean, I am with you. There will always be a Hiccup and Astrid.
But as Hiccup leans in to kiss her, they were interrupted once again by the triple strike. Fast forward to the climax of the episode, Astrid had used her other senses to tame the triple strike, impressing everyone around her, especially Hiccup. Once the storm cleared for good, Burke's healer, Gothi, arrived at the edge and cured Astrid's blindness. And the first thing she saw was Hiccup staring at her with hope in his eyes.
Astrid? Are you...
Looking at you? Seems like it.
Thank you, Gothi.
And now we've come to the moment where Hiccup finally became official. Up to this point, I've used words like possible to describe Hiccup, but now I will use the word official, because at the end of this episode, Astrid admits that she felt that Hiccup was trying to kiss her back in the forest, and she asked him why he didn't do it. Hiccup told her that it was because it wasn't perfect, and he admitted that he had been thinking about it a lot. Astrid then gave him a look he had never seen from her before, and the two realized just how perfect this situation was. They leaned in and finally kissed. A good, proper kiss. This was the kiss that made them official. From that moment on, their relationship really began to blossom, but they initially tried to hide it from everyone else. But by the end of the season, they kissed after Hiccup had saved Astrid from Vigo Grimborn, and everyone saw it. I've made jokes that these guys were literally the fandom in that moment. Fast forward a bit to season 5 of Race to the Edge, Hiccup continues going strong, but at some point between episodes 1 and 2, Hiccup and Astrid became betrothed. Episode 2 consists of Astrid worrying out of her mind that she didn't get Hiccup a betrothal gift, but Hiccup tells her that her just being there with him was the only gift he needed. From here, we fast forward a few episodes to episode 5, where Hiccup had managed to outsmart the Sentinels on Vanaheim. Astrid told him that the way he had figured out how to escape Vanaheim was ingenious.
You know what? I've had enough thinking to last me an entire week. I'm going to get some sleep.
Fast forward another 2 episodes, Hiccup and Astrid went on a little vacation while hunting for supplies to make his new dragon eye. While there, the two of them shared some laughs and held each other romantically. They expressed concerns that they were perhaps spending a little too much time together and not enough for the rest of the team, but they assured themselves that spending time with each other was also quite important. Astrid then calls Hiccup a great boyfriend, blushing while she said it, making Hiccup beam with pride. From that point on until midway through season 6, things with Hiccup remained pretty much the same. But when we reach the 6th episode, Hiccup goes in an interesting direction, one we've never seen before, one which directly challenged their relationship in a very important way, which, up until this point, had been pretty stable. Astrid saw the way Dagger and Mala acted towards each other, and she wanted that with Hiccup. Hiccup, however, insisted that their relationship was much different from theirs, and he described it as being built off of years of friendship, which Astrid verbally agreed with but mentally couldn't stand it. She sat in her room comforted by Stormfly, thinking about Hiccup. She then looked at the betrothal necklace he had given her. She put it on and immediately felt better, and when Hiccup came over to talk to her, she tried her best to get him to notice the necklace. Hiccup didn't see it though, and he asked her if he wanted to go deliver some scrap metal with him, which she agreed to, visibly upset. She tried again at the island with the armor wing, directly asking Hiccup if he noticed anything different, but Hiccup hit us with a misdirect by saying he saw a dragon eye lens on the armor wing way off in the distance behind her, rather than the necklace she was wearing right in front of him. Eventually, Astrid becomes angry with him for all of this. When he asks her what was wrong, she tells him exactly what was wrong. Hiccup's reaction wasn't exactly what she was expecting either.
Oh, no, it looks great.
Seriously?
She admits to him how she felt jealous about Dagger and Mala's relationship.
Dagger and Mala have known each other a few months, and they can't stand to be apart. We've known each other our whole lives, Hiccup. And I've never felt further away from you.
As we fast forward to the end of the episode, Hiccup is feeling pressure from all sides to come up with a plan to escape the dragonflyers, but he is so distracted by everything that he can't think of anything at all. Eventually, he looks at Astrid, who has her back turned to him, but is still looking back at him. Hiccup's expression is one of someone begging for forgiveness. He knew he needed Astrid's support in that moment, and Astrid, of course, gave it to him.
I'm with you.
I know.
With her help, Hiccup formulates a plan and escapes the flyers. Once back on the edge, Hiccup pulled her aside to talk to her privately. She told him not to say anything and that she was just being silly, but Hiccup told her that that wasn't the case. He admits that he should have seen that necklace right away, and then admits that he had been taking her for granted recently, and that he realized that today. Astrid smiled at him as he continued, telling her he couldn't have done any of this without her. He then tells her that he loves her for the first time, and that he always will.
I know you do. We don't have to be like them. I mean, we have a different kind of—
But then Hiccup cuts her off by kissing her mid-sentence. And in my opinion, this is the best kiss in Race to the Edge besides the blindsided one. The amount of passion is just chef's kiss. And these moments throughout the rest of Season 6 don't let up either. In episode 10, we see a very important scene between the two of them, where Hiccup snaps at everyone in the room after his father was gravely injured. Astrid finds him alone later on and comforts him, basically telling him how it was fate that they would all end up here in this moment. She even admits that she likely would have ended up with him no matter how long it took for him to prove himself, which was a pretty nice moment. This, however, did not fix Stoic's condition, which comes back to Hiccup in the form of him being appointed acting chief in his father's absence, right before they were about to go on a massive mission to save the King of Dragons. As the riders began packing up their stuff to return to Berk, Astrid went and found Hiccup in his hut, and they share a nice moment where Astrid tells him that his father would be proud.
I'm proud. And where you go, I go.
Thank you for everything.
In the season finale, they both knew the risks they were about to take. Hiccup stops Astrid and tries to speak to her, but Astrid cuts him off, assuring him that they would be okay. She once again says how proud his father would be, and how proud she was of him. Once Hiccup defeated Johan and Krogan, the two of them attended Dagger and Mala's wedding, where they shared yet another passionate kiss. Why are they making out at someone else's wedding? You know what? I don't care. It's cute. From here, we fast forward nearly 2 years to the events of How to Train Your Dragon 2. One morning when Hiccup woke up, his father approached him and began to speak to him how he thought Hiccup was finally ready to be chief. Next thing everyone knew, Hiccup and Toothless were gone. Hiccup wasn't ready to be chief yet, so he fled the situation. Back on Berk, Astrid once again showed her competitive side by winning the dragon race, basically winning a 1v4 against Snotlout, Fishlegs, and the twins. After she won, she followed Hiccup and arrived on the back of Stormfly.
Afternoon, milady.
Astrid asked where he had been, to which Hiccup replied by saying he was avoiding his father. And here we get a nice moment between them, which shows just how well they know each other, and how comfortable they've become with one another.
Son, we need to talk.
Not now, Dad. I got a whole day of goofing off to get started.
You're the pride of Berk, son, and I couldn't be prouder.
Aw, thanks, Dad. I'm pretty impressed with myself, too.
Okay, just hold still. Very serious.
Once Hiccup gets to the point of his reason to run, Astrid thinks it's amazing that he had been appointed chief, but she quickly realizes Hiccup doesn't feel the same way. Astrid tells him that it was an honor, and that she would be pretty excited, but Hiccup tells her that he's not like her.
You know exactly who you are, you always have, but I'm still looking.
What you're searching for isn't out there, Hiccup. It's in here. Maybe you just don't see it yet.
Right after this though, the two of them spot smoke rising into the air and they decide to go investigate. And when they arrive, they find a dragon hunter base that had been completely obliterated, minus one last part which was still active and that managed to entrap Stormfly and Astrid in a net. Hiccup saved Astrid's life by catching her, but Stormfly hit the ground and was immediately subdued by the hunters. Hiccup threatened them all with Inferno, while also defending Astrid, who was weaponless. And after a bit of back and forth between them and the hunters, they managed to escape and return back to Berk. Hiccup began trying to tell everyone what they had found, while being pestered by his father about becoming chief. Eventually, he got their attention with the help of Astrid when they explained how the base looked and who they worked for.
Bloodfist. Drago Bloodfist.
Yeah. Wait. You know him?
Hiccup wanted to go out after Drago to attempt to persuade him, similar to how he had persuaded many of his enemies, like Alvin the Treacherous, Dagger the Deranged, and Vigo Grimborn. Stoic firmly told him no, but Hiccup was just as determined. Astrid tried to get him to stay as well, but he kissed her on the cheek saying he had to do this and left. He didn't go alone though, as Astrid immediately began to follow him like she always did. The two of them tracked down the dragon hunters, but as Astrid readies her axe to attack, Hiccup surrenders to them. Astrid, confused, goes along with it, showing just how quick on the uptake they had both become with each other's shenanigans, so to speak. That was hard to say. Stoic and the other riders arrive, and after Hiccup runs off again, Astrid is ordered by Stoic to lead the others back to Berk, and that he had had enough mutiny for one day. The next time Hiccup and Astrid see each other was during the battle at Valka's sanctuary, where Hiccup introduces her to his mother in the most dramatic way I've ever seen.
Well, now you know where I get my dramatic flair.
But then, tragedy struck, as Toothless, while under control from Drago's Bewilderbeast, kills Stoic with a plasma blast that was meant to kill Hiccup. Astrid immediately went over and put his arms around Hiccup as he cried against his father's lifeless body. The two held each other and cried, mourning the loss of Stoic the Vast. After performing the ritual to send Stoic to Valhalla, Hiccup formulated a plan to try to get Toothless back and to defeat Drago. Astrid, of course, followed him, along with everyone else, and together, they managed to take back Berk and defeat Drago's Bewilderbeast once Toothless assumed the role of Alpha.
Take him down, babe!
After the battle, Astrid approached Hiccup with a smirk on her face.
Still doing that one. That's hilarious. Come here, you.
Ooh. And now we fast forward one more year to the events of the Hidden World. The two were still just as compatible as before, taking down dragon hunters with ease on their missions. But one night, while they were eating in the Great Hall, Gabber brought the idea of marriage to the table.
Hang up those saddles and get married.
The M word.
Gross. Unless it's me.
Hiccup seemed to love the idea, but Astrid did not. And I think it's interesting to try to analyze why. For the past year fighting Drago's hunters, Hiccup had become increasingly dependent on Toothless, and without Toothless, Hiccup would completely change and collapse, and Astrid knew that. When Astrid finds him looking over the rapidly developing Berk, Hiccup brings up the idea of marriage again.
You think you and I should...
Oh, gods no. We're nowhere near ready for that.
Many people have criticized Astrid for going back on that statement by marrying him so soon afterwards, but she wasn't talking about time. You see, from the start, Hiccup had always had an issue with his self-confidence. If it weren't for him finding Toothless, he may never have been able to break out of that cycle he was in. Hiccup's character arc throughout the third film is based off him learning that he doesn't in fact need Toothless to be himself. He has become perfectly capable of doing things on his own, like becoming chief of the tribe and defeating dragon hunters, for example. The third film's exploration of this uncertainty within Hiccup makes it my favorite out of the three from a character development standpoint. One of my favorite Hickster moments ever happens next, where they exchange some friendly banter, which turns into a playful tickle match, which Astrid wins, of course. But the next thing we know, Toothless had run off and discovered Grimmel's bait, the Light Fury. We get yet another moment where Astrid saves Hiccup from the Light Fury's plasma blast. The next day, the Drag Gang is hanging out in the stables, and Astrid begins to tease Hiccup about Toothless's newfound crush.
What a night.
What's gotten into you? What is all this slobbering and panting?
Isn't it obvious? He's in love.
Trust me, relationships are nothing but pain and misery. What did I just say?
Hiccup then returns to the spot where the Light Fury was found with Tough Nut to examine the area for any clues, but instead he finds a dart purposefully left behind by Grimmel. When he returns with the dart, he shows everyone, and Eret immediately identifies it as Grimmel's.
I know this handiwork. Grimmel the Grizzly, famous back where I'm from. The smartest dragon hunter I ever met. Well, next to me, of course.
Eret then explains that Grimmel is not one to be underestimated.
He lives for the hunt, to get inside the mind of his prey, to control its every choice. It's all a game to him.
Both Hiccup and Astrid remember how they had managed to take down Vigo's operation, and they are both confident that they can do the same to Grimmel. But after it was made abundantly clear that Grimmel was much more of a threat than Vigo ever was, Hiccup, who is now chief, tells everyone they need to disappear.
I don't see a way of staying here any longer.
Hey! Hear him out!
This is a huge step forward for Hickstrid, because in the scene before, where they had their tickle fight, Hiccup had told her about the hidden world, and expressed his idea to move all of Berk there, and live amongst the dragons. At that point, Astrid had completely shut this idea down, but here, she defends Hiccup during his speech and even adds on to it.
Take the dragons to a place where no one will find them.
And where might that be?
He's talking about a quest for the hidden world.
The hidden what? Out to lunch.
Eventually, they find an uninhabited island where they settle down, and while there, Hiccup asks Astrid if she thought he was crazy, like everyone else seemed to be thinking at the time.
Let's just say this whole idea is very you.
Well, thanks for supporting me last night. It meant a lot.
Don't thank me yet.
The next morning, after Hiccup witnessed that Toothless couldn't follow the Light Fury on his own, he began to design a tail similar to the one he had made Toothless way back when and gifted the Night Fury. Astrid saw this and became very proud of him, because it seemed like he was starting to let Toothless go and embrace that change.
What?
No, nothing. I'm impressed. I mean, look at you. Embracing change. I am proud of you.
Once Toothless left, though, Hiccup was visibly nervous and unsure what to do. Later, Valka went out on a scouting mission and discovered Grimmel's current location. This was Hiccup's first real test without Toothless, as he rode on the back of Stormfly with Astrid along with the other riders, to try to defeat Grimmel in a sneak attack. Grimmel, however, was prepared. And the mission went absolutely horribly, forcing them to flee. In the process, they had left Roughnut behind. When they landed back at Berk, everyone realized Roughnut wasn't there, and Hiccup began to feel the effects of his old self coming back into his life. His first mission without Toothless had been a complete failure. The effects of him not being able to do anything right was seeping back into his mind. Astrid noticed this and spoke to Valka about it.
He thinks he has to lead alone. Well, because his father had to. He doesn't realize the strength you have together. Do you still believe in him?
Of course. I wish he did. But he thinks he's nothing without Toothless.
Valka told Astrid to help him realize the truth. To do so, Astrid got on Stormfly and told him to also get on. Their journey took them to the edges of their known world, and eventually they found the hidden world and dove in. We get a parallel to their romantic flight from the first film as they explore this new realm, where Stormfly literally glowed along with everything else in the caldera. However, the next thing they found shook Hiccup to his core. The two of them found Toothless and the Light Fury, where Toothless had already assumed his position as alpha amongst the entire realm. Hiccup watched as Toothless flew around with the Light Fury with all the other dragons in tow, and this sight brought a tear to his eye. Not a tear of happiness for his friend, but a tear of sadness, realizing for the first time that Toothless may have to leave him for good. Astrid realized this and tried to comfort him, but they then come face to face with a wild rumble horn that alerts all the dragons to their presence. Toothless is forced to save his human while Astrid rides on Stormfly, and together they escape, but the flight back home was silent. Toothless was visibly disheartened to have left this newfound home, and both Hiccup and Astrid know it as they exchange knowing glances. When they land on New Berk, Hiccup faces Toothless and explains that he understands that Toothless belonged there with her.
We don't. And that's all right. We'll find a way to man.
And then they are met with a shock as the Light Fury revealed herself. Hiccup was ecstatic, but then Roughnut arrived, and Astrid knew something was wrong. Sure enough, it turns out that Grimmel had followed Roughnut back, and he finally succeeded in kidnapping Toothless along with the Light Fury. All Hiccup could do was sit back and watch as Grimmel manipulated the situation to force every single dragon on Berk to follow him down to Drago's army. Hiccup was suddenly hit with the cold realization that he was back to his former self, the 15-year-old Hiccup of the litter. Valka once again encourages Astrid to speak to him. He needed to be told the true reality of the situation. He needed some tough love. After listening to Hiccup talk about how he felt, she told him that he was right. He was right back to where he started.
But I was the first to believe in you. And I have watched you doubt whether you're worthy ever since. But you know what? I am the person I am today because of you. I never told you that, but it's true. You are the bravest, most stubborn, most determined knucklehead I know.
She told him that Toothless didn't give him all those traits. Toothless simply made it easier, and that now it was going to be a lot harder. We then reached the most famous parallel in the entire franchise.
So, what are you gonna do about it?
Probably something stupid.
Good, but you've already done that.
Then something crazy.
That's more like it.
Probably something stupid.
That's the Hiccup I know.
With his newfound confidence, they all managed to take down Drago's army once and for all and free the dragons. During this, Hiccup and Astrid begin working together, proving Valka's statement from before.
Heads up!
Thanks! Look out!
Thanks.
Fast forward to the aftermath of the battle, Hiccup and Astrid reunite, and she holds him upright since he lost his prosthetic leg. The two watch as Toothless and the Light Fairy begin to comfort each other, and while doing this, Hiccup turns to face her, and she faces back, nods, and then they touch foreheads. I interpret this scene like this. Hiccup finally understood what Astrid had meant by saying they were not ready to marry yet, and this is him asking her if they were now ready, since they had managed to take back their dragons without, well, their dragons. Astrid nodding and touching his forehead with her own was her answer. Yes, they were now ready to get married. Hiccup's major arc had nearly been complete. However, one thing remained, saying goodbye. Once Toothless was on his feet again, he glanced out towards the sea, a clear indication that he knew it was time to go back to his new home. Hiccup immediately understood, and after a very emotional few minutes where everyone said goodbye to their dragons, Toothless turned towards Hiccup and Astrid, and then flew off with the rest of the dragons towards safety, towards the hidden world, where they would remain safe and undetected for centuries. I don't know exactly how long of a time skip there is between the aftermath of the battle and now, but considering New Berk is fully constructed, I'd say probably a couple of months, perhaps even a year. After nearly 7 years since their first kiss, the two of them finally became wedded.
For the Chief and Chiefess!
Astrid Hofferson became Astrid Haddock. After the wedding, they stand on the cliffside and hold each other, gazing out over the endless ocean towards the hidden world. A decade then passes, and it's time that we take a small detour away from the hidden world to visit How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming. Hiccup and Astrid are both now 31 years old, and in that 10-year gap, they had a daughter named Zephyr and a son named Nothing. Their children aren't too keen about the upcoming Snuggle Talk.
Zephyr, what are you doing?
Testing my dragon defense system? You and all the grown-ups in New Berk are leaving them snacks. What if one shows up?
Well, that would be great. We love dragons.
Why? They're monsters.
Later, Hiccup and Astrid are sitting by the fire with their children playing around them. They talk about the old Snuggle Talk pageant, and Astrid puts forth the idea of bringing it back to teach the children of New Berk how dragons and Vikings became friends. Hiccup agrees enthusiastically and says that they should talk to Gobber, but before doing that, Hiccup then walks over to the edge of their deck and stares at the sky, missing Toothless. Astrid joins him and comforts him, holding his hand and leaning against his shoulder.
I wonder if Toothless ever misses me.
The next day, the two of them speak to Gobber and decide on the Snuggle Talk pageant. While working on the pageant, we get a funny moment where Astrid mistakes Tough Nut for Hiccup since he was mimicking Hiccup's gait. After the abysmal pageant, Hiccup and Astrid are delighted to see that Zephyr and Nothing's perspective on dragons completely shifted. The pageant had worked, mostly. What they didn't know was that Toothless had actually visited New Berk after his own children escaped the hidden world and flew there themselves. Toothless had actually met Zephyr already, but they didn't know that, which I find funny. On their walk back home, Hiccup tells Astrid that she was right about everything.
It was exactly what everyone needed. For the kids, and for the memory of my father.
After the Haddock family spotted Toothless flying over New Berk, they decide to go visit Toothless's home as well. Now we are back within the events of the third film. We find the Haddock family on a small boat just next to the entrance of the Hidden World, in hopes of possibly reuniting with their dragons after 10 long years. Toothless and his family were guarding the entrance, and when they spotted the boat, Toothless went out to confront the intruders, landing on the bow. Astrid watches in fear as she hides her kids, waiting to see if Toothless recognized him. This is a little bit of a continuity error between Homecoming and the third film, I think, since Toothless knew who Hiccup was in Homecoming but didn't know him here. Nevertheless, Toothless immediately recognized Hiccup after he stretched out his hand for him to smell. With the help of his wife, Hiccup invites Zephyr and Nothing to meet Toothless in a similar way to how he had first tamed Toothless all those years ago. The two parents watch in awe as Toothless allowed them to touch him. They then take their children on a ride flying on Toothless, and later, Stormfly, who had also arrived. The two still flirt with each other, as Hiccup shows he hadn't lost any of his ability to fly Toothless, as they traded their kids mid-flight. The movie ends with both families flying off into the sky, human and dragon. Hiccup and Astrid grew old together and lived out the rest of their lives happily married, we can assume. And in the process, they inspired millions of viewers of the show worldwide with their relationships. I would like to thank you all for watching this video, and I plan to do more videos in this style very soon. Please make sure to join my Discord server, along with following me on Twitter and Instagram if you'd like. If you enjoyed, hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.